Hey y'all, today I'm going to break down how you can develop a reading habit. It's the same process that took me from reading 0 books to reading every single day. And you and I are going to go through this process together step by splitting it up into 3 phases. So phase number 1, lay the foundation. There's 2 questions that you need to ask yourself before anything else. And the first question is, do you actually want to read? Look, reading is an investment that doesn't typically have immediate payoffs. It takes time out of your day. It's challenging to do it correctly. And it isn't even the most efficient way of taking in information. If all you care about is inputs, then you can achieve that 2 to 3 times faster just by listening. YouTube, podcasts, audiobooks, they're all great for that. But I'm not talking about that stuff in this video. I'm talking about these right here, real physical books. You have to make the choice on whether or not these are worth your time. And I'm not going to try to persuade you one way or the other, because what works for me isn't necessarily what's going to work for you. But if you're like me and you're looking for something that you can do every single day that's going to expose you to new information and expand your perspective, then you may want to give reading a shot. So that's question number 1. And remember, we're laying the foundation here, and your belief is going to determine your actions. So you got to articulate the beliefs first. And that leads me to question number 2, which is, why aren't you reading already? Okay, so I made a video on that years ago, and if you want to watch it, you can, but I'm going to save you some time and just get right to the point. The reason most people don't read is because they don't think it's worth their time. It's really simple, y'all. We tend to divide things in our lives into needs and wants. I need food, I need water, I need sleep to survive, so I'm always going to make sure that I get those things. What I want is put into this non-essential, nice to have category. And to make this work, you have to take reading out of the nice to have box and place it into the category of essentials. And if you can do that, then you're ready to graduate to phase number 2, which is creating a framework. Okay, so this is the fun part where you get to actually start building the habit. And there are 3 cheat codes I use anytime I start something new, and they've worked for me every time. So the first is choose a time and a place that you will do the thing every single day. The second is reduce any and all friction to 0. And I'll save number 3 for later on in the video. Let's go ahead and address these 2. So listen, picking a time and a place is so easy to overlook, but you don't want to skip this step because your brain loves habits and it loves systems. Why? Novelty, while attractive, is expensive, and your brain is on a budget. So if it can default to those automated behaviors that aren't metabolically expensive, it will. And guess what? Time and place are the building sites for those behaviors. So for me, I looked at my daily schedule and I knew right off the bat, if I try to read at night, I'm just going to end up falling asleep. I know myself, that's not going to work for me. So instead, I decided I'm going to wake up early. I'm going to go grab a cup of coffee at Starbucks or somewhere, and I'm going to use that combination of caffeine and a sense of accomplishment for completing this task as motivation to get me out of the bed in the morning, to the coffee shop, into a chair with a book in my hand. Now, what works for me may not work for you. You may love sitting in bed at night reading. You may not like coffee, whatever it is, you'll have to experiment and find what works. But the best time and place to read is the time where you'll actually do it and do it consistently with 0 or as little friction as possible. And that's the next code. You have to eliminate any and all friction that stands in the way of consistency. Okay, so you've chosen your time and your place. Now you need to observe yourself going through all the steps it takes you to get there and think to yourself, is there any step throughout this whole process that I could see myself using as an excuse to keep from doing the thing? And you've got to be meticulous here, because so often it's the most micro of decisions or actions that's eventually going to cause this feedback loop to break down. For me, my alarm would go off, I'd wake up, and one of the first thoughts I'd have was, oh, what am I going to wear? And then I'd have to go through the process of picking out clothes. What's the weather outside? Dang, my favorite pair of jeans is dirty, bummer. I guess I need to do laundry. And just like that, now I'm making to-do lists for myself instead of going to read. The problem was easy to fix. I just started laying my clothes out the night before. But if I hadn't taken the time to address that friction, there's no doubt in my mind, eventually one morning I would have just made it a reason not to walk out the door just this once. And then that would lead to another excuse and another until the habit's broken. And that's not what we want to do. Now, number 3, if you want to start a reading habit, listen up, because this is the most important step. Start small, start slow, and start badly. So why am I saying it that way? Why not big, fast, and awesome? Well, if you can do it that way, great. But chances are, if you're watching this video, you've tried that, and I'm guessing it didn't work out. It definitely didn't work out for me. In my view, if you're trying to make something a habit, you need to figure out how you can get things set up where you can do it forever. There's this quote that I love. It says, "The man who loves walking will walk further than the man who loves the destination." And the same goes for reading. So pick a small book, make sure it's about something that you're actually interested in, and then give yourself permission to read it as slowly and as badly as you need to. Understand you're going to suck at this at first, and that's okay. The more consecutive days that you can stack up on top of one another reading, the better you'll get. I remember I started reading 20 minutes a day, and I did that for at least a month. I can't really remember how long, but it was awful at first. I would finish and I would have no idea what I just read, but I kept showing up every morning. And then before I knew it, I bumped it up to 30 minutes and then an hour. You know that analogy of the frog in a frying pan? You can't just stick it in the hot pan or it'll jump out, but you can turn up the heat gradually over time. Well, I think you can apply that same technique to your mind. You have to have enough tolerance to deal with the fact that you're less capable than your ego wants you to believe. And the best solution I found for that is this slow, methodical, IV drip-like approach where at first you can't tell the difference, but then one day you wake up and you've read hundreds of books and it feels effortless. Okay, but hold on now, we're not done yet. We're almost there, but we've got to make sure all the work that we just did doesn't go to waste. We want to build this thing to last, right? And we're going to do that by identifying the payoffs. Again, if there's no perceived benefit, the habit will fail. But reading is one of the highest ROI activities that I know of. Charlie Munger famously said, "In my whole life, I've known no wise people who didn't read all the time. None. Zero." But you can't base this off of what someone else thinks. They have to be your reasons, your payoffs. For me, the payoffs are books are a closed system. They reduce distraction and provide me with a tactile, almost meditative practice that engages my brain and exposes me to new ideas that I can recall later on to improve my overall quality of life. That's the value proposition for me. You've got to figure out what it's going to be for you. Now, stop thinking about it, go find a book and enjoy reading.